Podcast episode 5, the introduction. In this episode, I'm going to examine a single case in detail. It is a case that has been widely reported in the national press, referenced in legal commentary, and often cited in discussions about the family court system. It brings together in one place many of the systemic issues explored in the previous episodes. I want to be transparent at the outset. I am personally connected to this case. It is one of the reasons this channel exists. But I'm not presenting it here as a personal story. I'm presenting it as a case study. That distinction matters. Everything I will refer to in this episode comes from material that is already in the public domain. Published judgments, contemporaneous documents, and reporting by established journalists. I will not ask you to take my word for anything. I will not ask for sympathy, and I will not ask you to reach a particular conclusion. My aim is much narrower and much more important. It is to show how a safeguarding case can evolve once a narrative becomes fixed, how findings travel between systems, how scrutiny narrows instead of widens, and how outcomes for children and families can diverge sharply from the stated aim of protection. This episode does not revisit the synthesis you have already heard. Instead, it grounds those conclusions in one detailed example. I will walk through the events chronologically. I will distinguish clearly between what is documented, what is inferred, and what remains unanswered. And I will leave it to you to decide what this case reveals about the system in practice. Episode 5. Case study, when the narrative is fixed. This episode brings together everything we have explored so far through one detailed case study. Not to decide guilt or innocence, but to show how the system behaves once the narrative is fixed. Victoria Haigh was a successful professional and a mother with no criminal convictions. When concerns were raised about her daughter's safety, she did what safeguarding guidance tells parents to do. She reported them. What followed was not a criminal investigation tested before a jury. It was a family court process held largely in private, where findings were made on a civil standard of proof about her character, motivation, and behaviour. Once those findings were made, they travelled. They travelled into later family court decisions. They travelled into criminal sentencing for breaches of court orders. They travelled into prison risk assessments. They travelled into safeguarding plans for an unborn child. They travelled into the media. Less than 12 weeks before a pivotal incident, Victoria Haigh had celebrated her daughter's birthday at a restaurant. Family members and child protection supervisors were present. The visit was calm and uneventful. When she later encountered her daughter unexpectedly at a petrol station, the child appeared terrified of her. This reaction was shocking, not because of long absence, but because the mother had been present recently. Fear had been learned. At the time, Victoria Haigh was 34 weeks pregnant. She was on her way to meet a police superintendent with a detailed dossier setting out discrepancies between police and social worker statements, inconsistencies in evidence handling, and concerns that her child remained at risk. After that meeting, she travelled on to London for an all-party parliamentary meeting chaired by John Hemming MP, attended by around 100 parents raising concerns about the family court system, and the chief executive of CAFCASS, Anthony Douglas. According to reporting by Christopher Booker, she approached the chief executive of CAFCASS directly for help. After these events, she was held in police custody for up to 72 hours. Only after that detention was she summoned to the High Court in London and ordered to show cause why she should not be imprisoned. Heavily pregnant, she was required to travel in the early hours of the morning under threat of immediate incarceration. The physical toll was immediate. After meeting police, paramedics met her in London due to acute abdominal pain. Once reassured that her unborn baby was safe, she discharged herself from hospital and continued to the parliamentary meeting. While later in custody, safeguarding processes extended again. An unborn child protection plan existed. Removal at birth was contemplated. On the advice of a member of Parliament, she fled to Ireland to protect her baby. Irish social workers were instructed by English authorities to remove the child. They were alarmed. They assessed the mother directly and found no safeguarding risk. Christopher Booker later wrote about the contrast in his article. Social workers see sense. It's just a shame they're not ours. Later that same year, while Victoria was in prison, the Ministry of Justice Prison Service in-house social work team assessed her for the mother and baby unit. She met all criteria: no substance misuse, no unmanaged mental health issues, no safeguarding concerns. After a 90-day enforced separation, she was reunited with her baby and safely cared for her child in custody. She was described as a model prisoner and a caring mother. Despite this, when temporary release was considered, external agencies classified her as MAPA Level 3, a category reserved for dangerous offenders. The prison governor overruled that assessment, stating there was no risk and no rehabilitation required. Upon release, her first phone call was to journalist Christopher Booker. Across multiple independent assessments in 2 countries, the conclusion was consistent. This mother was not a risk to her child. Yet the original narrative did not change. This case is not presented as an anomaly. It shows what happens when a system cannot revise its conclusions, even when faced with contradictory evidence. When safeguarding becomes control, challenge becomes danger, and silence becomes the condition of safety. In the final synthesis episode, we step back and ask what this means for the public, for professionals and for policymakers, and how a system designed to protect can lose its way. This case is not presented to persuade. It is presented to demonstrate. By this point in the series, you have already heard the synthesis. You have already seen the broader pattern. This episode simply shows what the pattern looks like when it plays out in real time, in one life, and across multiple institutions. If nothing else, it demonstrates why process matters. Because when narratives harden and systems stop checking themselves, the consequences are not abstract. They are lived. And they are carried forward by children long after the courtrooms have moved on.